The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Mid-Carolina Service Company.
Mid-Carolina Service Company is the first name to search for your residential or commercial HVAC needs in Lexington and surrounding areas.
Just go holler at Jason and Clint. They'll hook you up on the air conditioners, on the restaurant equipment, refrigerators, refrigeration, ice machine repair. They've been doing this for years. I know them cats forever.
Family owned and operated since 2006, they pride themselves in their quality work and customer relationships. Call 803-356-4153 or visit midcarolinaserviceco.com for a no obligation quote for service today.
The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by True Brilliance Entertainment.
True Brilliance is a production, promotions, and management company dedicated to connecting artists and producers across the Carolinas to music industry professionals.
Several of their clients have placements both domestic and internationally as a result of their services.
Are you an artist or producer looking to build meaningful relationships within the music industry? Then True Brilliance is for you. Check them out at paramilitary.com. That's spelled P-A-I-R-A military.com.
This episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Bob's. Bob's is a Columbia-based retailer of over 100 Black-owned products from 20 Black-owned businesses. Bob's offers a wide range of items from household cleaning, cosmetics, and everything in between. With every visit to Bob's, you support Black-owned businesses, giving them the opportunity to grow and establish connections with our community. Bob's is located inside the Noma warehouse at 2222 Sumter Street in Columbia, South Carolina. Visit their website, weshopbobs.com for in-store pickup or to find out more. Bob's can also be found via social media on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at weshopbobs. When you stop by, tell them the Hilltop Glove sent you. Bob's brings quality Black brands to the Columbia community. The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Red Rooster Sports Bar and Grill. Red Rooster is your neighborhood bar and grill serving the best wings, burgers, and baskets in the Met.
Like the amazing food, the bar is always on tap, and there's plenty of screens to watch the big game. Red Rooster is the Midland's premier meetup spot for local car and bike clubs, fraternities, and sororities.
Staff is dedicated to accommodating all kinds of parties and events. If you're looking to catch a game, have a bite, and a drink, look no further than the Red Rooster.
Red Rooster is located at 7500 Wilson Boulevard, Columbia, South Carolina. For more information, visit redroostersportsbar.com or visit them on Facebook and Instagram at Red Rooster Sports Bar. Go where the winners go.
Welcome to the Hilltop Glove Podcast.
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 Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Miss Ebony Haywood. Ebony is a Raleigh, North Carolina born and raised educator, mother, and owner of Affirm Kid. She is the vice president of people and culture at a local ed tech company where she leads the company's hiring and expansion department to include a diverse and inclusive workforce. She attended Meredith College, a liberal arts college in Raleigh, and in 2021, she started her business, Affirm Kid, which specializes in affirmation cards, bundles, and artwork for kids. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I am great. I'm excited to be here and talk to you all. So yes, I'm doing great.
But thank you so much for waking up this morning, and you're clearly family. So
yes.
Thank you so much. We also have DJ and and Mike on the line, so they'll be chiming in too. So can you tell the people a little bit about yourself and how did you get to where you are?
Sure. So one thing I like to tell people about my path is it makes no sense. So when I talk about it, I prepare people for, it's not a linear path and it's what I call a road less traveled. So, I've always wanted to be, I've always wanted to be an educator. I grew up around educators. My grandmother was a teacher. My aunt was a teacher, all of them in South Carolina. growing up, going to spend time with them in the summers and helping them in their classrooms. And my mom's sister is a teacher. So my dad's sister was a teacher. My mom's sister was a teacher. My grandma's a teacher. I'm constantly around educators. Like, I just wanted to be a teacher and did follow that path. I mean, I think one thing about me is if I know I want to do something, I'm kind of stay on that. And so everybody knew I was going to eventually be a teacher. And I did that, went to school, got a teaching scholarship to be a teacher and that pays for some of my college, followed that path, became a teacher, taught elementary school. I taught fifth grade for a few years, then transitioned to be an assistant principal. So, kind of got into it, and then just one of those things where you get into something and you just figure out how to kind of maximize that path. And so was assistant principal, but then just decided that I wanted to do something different and had the unique opportunity of, which I always share this because it is important in my path, that parents at a school where I was assistant principal, they had just started a business and actually left to go work for them as they were starting a business. And, my relationship with them is pretty critical to my path and where I went, because they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so I left education to go work in an industry that I knew nothing about. And one thing the husband said to me is that you are coachable and I can teach you all of these things, but the things that you already have, I can't teach people. And so I left there to start a career in security industry and stayed in that space for 10 years, actually. So started in operations, being over coordinating operations, to moving into being over a director over professional services, which is like engineers. I managed a team of engineers, then took over managing training for the company, which again, even in that story, when I started, it was 30 of us. When I left the company was 400 and some thousand people. So I stayed through mergers and acquisitions. Obviously, I wasn't like organic growth, but learned a lot and was exposed to a lot over that time. But, those 10 years is pretty much where I grew up and really learned who I was. So I always like to share that, sometimes it just takes somebody betting on you to give you the opportunity to really see that you can do anything. And it's funny, I was reading a book the other day and it was like, I can do anything, but I can't do everything. And I wrote that down out of the book I was reading the other day. Right. It's so good, right? I can do anything, but I can't do everything. And it's a book called The Happiness Project I'm reading right now by Gretchen Rubin. And I wrote that down because that resonated with me, because someone else know we can do the thing, but we also can't do everything. So that's one thing I feel like I can do almost anything, but I don't want to be a doctor, but I feel like if I could figure it out. So that's kind of my path. And then last year in the middle of the pandemic, I was at my company and just felt like I was being pulled to kind of make a big change. Personally, I also went through divorce in 2020. So when people talk about 2020, I'm like, let's come here and let's size up paperwork here. Cause 2020 was rough, but did you do these things in 2020? Because we had a pandemic going on, but I was also navigating a lot of personal things too. So after 2020, I was like, I just felt like I needed to, my word for 2021 was restoration. I pick a word of the year every year. And in that, I just decided my divorce was final in 2020, 2021, I just need to just revamp some things and decided to kind of jump into the job force, see what's there, recognizing that, I can do anything and, knew kind of what path I wanted and took a chance on myself and started applying and interviewing for new jobs. And, my goal was to be a VP, but that was more of a 5-year goal. And I did it that year. So yeah, that's kind of where I am. I'm a VP of people and culture for a company now. And I love my job. It's definitely intense. So basically, for people that don't know, people and culture is kind of the new term for HR. So I'm the vice president of HR for a company, a tech company.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah, that is interesting. Language.
I was literally looking at the article and I'm like, all right, that sounds like HR, but I'm not.
Yeah, so that's pretty much so people and culture is kind of the new term for HR. Because again, so if you think about HR, well, traditionally it's payroll and benefits. That's what you think about. Or I don't want to go talk to HR, right? Every HR has a connotation, just the semantics of HR usually makes people very uncomfortable. And so a lot of companies, if you start, now you guys will probably go back and look at, if you start looking at job postings and things, companies have transitioned to language to focus on the people, because without the people, the human capital, you can't do much.
True.
and the culture of the company. And so a lot of companies have either like now you'll see people operations, people and culture, or like, so my, goal is to be a chief people officer or chief people and culture officer for a company. So like that's kind of the C-suite level of the same thing. But traditionally it is HR. It's just expanded because people require more now than just
Well, we
payroll.
don't like being called resources anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's bigger than that. Like without the people, I mean, look right now, everybody, the great resignation is happening right now. Like everything
Yep.
is rounded around it. And people are leaving jobs because they're not happy about their job, their space, the culture, their work-life balance. They're being valued and respected. Nobody talked about that stuff before, but now people recognize the importance of, I don't want to work in a toxic environment and be stuck at the house all day.
Exactly.
In the pandemic.
Exactly.
Like, I don't want to be miserable all day at work and then have to be home and miserable possibly too, or stuck in the house. So, but that's a lot. One other important thing about my background is I do have a amazing 4-year-old daughter who I love dearly, Emory. And so she is key to a lot of the other things and very key to most of the decisions that I've made in the last 4 years as well. So.
Excellent.
You
Excellent.
have a beautiful story. I love the fact that you said that you're coachable. Obviously, being a teacher, you gained a lot of experience. So what field would you say tested you the most? Being an educator or working the tech company?
Ooh, listen, I don't even know. That is a good question. But, I think for me, I can't say what tested me the most. What I will say is that each of them had challenges that changed me the most, right? Not necessarily tested me, but like being an educator opened my mind to like, I want to teach and I want to have impact in the education space, but I don't want to be in the classroom, right? And so what I didn't share is that I opened a charter school in the middle of all this as well. So in 2015, I started work with a friend and I, old coworker, and I worked together, decided that we wanted to start a charter school and got a group on board, got a board on board. And so 2015, and then we opened a school with about 600 children, 1,800 on the wait list. Every year still had a wait list, but opened a brand new K through 7th grade charter school in Johnson County, which is right outside of Wake County, which is where Raleigh is, an area called Clayton, North Carolina. Opened that school in 2018. And so for me, it was like that. I found that like for me, not just mentally, but also just financially wise, like being in the classroom was not going to bid me well financially.
Mm-mm.
And even moving the path of being an assistant principal or whatever, like for me to be where I want to be financially, I would have to be superintendent. Like that's just where the number would be.
Yep.
So looking
We've
at
been
my
talking
path,
about that.
like
Mm-hmm.
looking at my path, it's like I can still have impact. And I think that's the thing that's important for people. Like you can still have impact in a space without being directly in the space, right? So I don't have to be in the classroom.
True.
I was having a bigger impact because I eventually ended up being the board chair of the charter school. So I managed the board, the 501c, all of that. And my impact was across a bigger building, right? So I wasn't just impacting a classroom as I was before. It started to broaden. And so that was my thing, is that I want to impact education. I always try to place myself in spaces or opportunities to either speak or interact with people where I can impact it in education, because it is a passion of mine. And I didn't want to like totally disband from education, because it is in my heart. And I think that's the cool thing about, even when I was at the tech company, people knew I was a teacher, as an educator. So they gave me space to run with that. That's how I ended up being the director of training for the company, because, I have my master's in education as well, with a concentration on adult education and training. And so my company there saw that and allowed me to build a training department that was not there before I was. So it's kind of like taking the stuff, right? The challenges in each space. The challenge in education was just in the classroom is that I just didn't feel like I had the resources, the support, the capacity, right? I mean, when people talk about my job now, like it's hard, but it's not being in the classroom. That's a whole different level. I have a whole different level of people. I respect teachers on a different level because I did it. Like I was in the trenches too. So when people talk about teaching now, like if you want to talk bad about a teacher and I'm around, you're not going to like my conversation because it is no joke. Until you have done it, you don't even understand the level of pressure and workload. Like I don't do as much work now as a vice president. It's a different type of work, but the feeling of work that I had was so different. And so that's why I said I can't really say which one tested me the most. They all test me because, you know, now I'm in a leadership role. So, you know, executive role, you're looking at business, you have people's livelihood, you know, that you want to make sure people are successful and growing and feel appreciated and valued. So each has tested me in a different way. I think, you know, the security space is male dominated, white dominated. That was my challenge there, is to say, like, I don't care, and to push through it. So I moved myself, you know, around in that space to where I was the only minority woman, you know, minority woman and person of color or African American, Hispanic, whatever, you know, in our leadership at that time. So that came with its own set of interesting challenges. I'll say that.
You can break some of those down if you want.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of them is just being the Black woman, right? Most of these white men had never worked with a Black woman ever. And so I had to balance trying to be myself, but also being true to myself, being myself, but making sure they understood, like, I'm not playing these games with y'all. Like, I'm not doing this. Like, we're not playing these games. I'm not about to be running around like I'm your assistant. Like, I'm on the same level as all of y'all, because they would play into that sometimes. Like, it's 40 of y'all white men. I'm not the help. So so you can go get me some coffee, but I'm not getting you no coffee. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
We're not doing that here. Like, I don't care. So I had to really learn. I mean, honestly, that job taught me how to really, and I hate to say it, like, be more manly, but like I had to be a bulldog, right? Just more aggressive. It taught me how to be more aggressive, and I had to get away from some of my like emotional and sometimes very like feminine approach to things. It just didn't work there. It works now more in my space where I am now. And that's just a part of like reading the room, right? They if I'm too subtle and passive, they are not going to pay attention to me, because most of the men in that space were, you know, they were ego driven. And so until I put my foot down, they really didn't respect me, you know? So, you know, those were just some of the challenges there of, you know, and also just like with the stuff going on in the world, like they didn't acknowledge any of the racial challenges. They didn't want to acknowledge or talk about it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I felt like that was no longer a safe space for me.
Yeah.
Because I can't thrive in a space that doesn't recognize me and who I am. And so I knew, like, this is not my next, right? This has got me to where I needed. I got, had a lot of opportunity. You know, the cool thing there was every job, I had 4 different positions in those 10 years. I was the first one in it. It was either created for me or I said there was a need and was created. So I had a lot of space, growth, opportunity, and still even financially, like, you know, when I look at the numbers, like I was hard on myself because I was trying to get to certain, you know, space and time and numbers. But like overall, in comparison to people in my age group and just people in general, you know, I was doing pretty well financially as well. So, you know, it gave me a lot of, you know, just opportunity to do things and travel and go, but also just bridge a gap, you know, financially. And, you know, I've had rental properties during that time and stuff. And I mean, people, that's just not the norm for somebody in their, you know, early 20s or mid 20s, I should say. So, but yeah, so those opportunities, and that's what I call them, no matter what, they're still opportunities, whether it go good or bad. You know, it just taught me what I know I need out of a workspace and place, and from my managers and from my teammates, and the feeling, you know, I think that I got to of like what I deserve and what I'm worthy of. And it applies to not just business, but personal as well. So.
Quick question, Ebony. Who are your parents?
My mama and my daddy My mother, Jacqueline Barron, she's from Plantersville, South Carolina, and my daddy's from Plantersville, South Carolina. So both of them are from that area and grew up there, met in high school, and then moved to North Carolina because my mom went to college here.
Yep.
And my parents, my mom is retired. She probably worked in the post office, and my dad actually still works at the post office. So, but both of them are very, they both went to college. My mom actually started her master's at NC State, and then came me, decided to actually be a stay-at-home mom when I was younger. But, both of them are local to me now, which is great.
That's good.
And they're really good support here from them. Actually, my mother, when I went through my divorce, and just because of my previous job, I was traveling a lot. She actually moved in with me. So I built a house here and had a lot more space than I probably needed for just me and Emory. And so I served. She retired and was traveling a lot, and between my sister, who's in the military, helping her and during her deployments and stuff. And I'm like, well, this can be like home base, right? If you want, like, make my house home base. She, has been traveling. She went to Liberia. She's getting ready to go back for a while. And she just does she's living her best life. I'm just going to say that.
Exactly.
She's living her best life. But it's been a blessing to have her here to help me, as I navigate, motherhood and being in a, very intense job space too. So, but yeah. And my dad, he's one of those, he's a math guy. That's what he calls himself. He's super smart and knows the numbers and can tell you everything about the stocks, and had us reading Reader's Digest when we were 10. So,
Yep.
like
Sounds
literally
right.
we would play games where it's like, you can read this page in Reader's Digest and tell me the definitions, you can have $20. Or he'd be like, if you read this book, I'll give you $20. And it's just like, oh, okay, I can read this book and get $20. Great, I'll do it.
Incentives.
So, yeah. So, I mean, those are, the type of parents I grew up. They definitely focus on education. And, I've applied that to my own child where, I'm very focused on her education. And she's 4, but she's a smarty. And that was my plan for her, to be very smart. And, she can read at 4. And that was my vision for her. So
Excellent.
She's doing it, and it's as a teacher, you just know all the challenges that they're going to have of somebody telling them they're not smart enough and can't do the thing. And so I'm trying to help her deal with those barriers before they come. So,
quick question. I always because I'm happy that you said the Plantersville part. And of course, we're cousins, and I always try to tell people about Plantersville. Could you explain to people what Plantersville is like real quick so that they can understand, our audience know where the folk come from?
I mean, so
I love Plantersville.
Listen, I spent most of my summers there and plenty of my track out. I went to year-round school. But Plantersville is like, I don't even know how to describe it. Well, it's in Georgetown, South Carolina. So, like, don't try to go Google Plantersville.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay?
Don't do that.
Don't try to Google that. You're going to have to Google Georgetown. You can find Georgetown because that's technically the area, the space they live in. If you see a sign, it will say Plantersville if you travel. But it's in Georgetown. It's near the water. Like, I always just grew up telling people my grandparents live in Myrtle Beach because nobody knew anything.
No one, you wouldn't be able to get there.
It's like, what? Where's that?
Where are you going?
Yeah. It's like, I'm just going to Myrtle Beach because that's where everybody worked too. But, it's a small knit town where, like, literally everybody knows everybody. And, very, very rural, small area. Again, I didn't live there, so I won't talk too much about it. But I love going to Plantersville because it is like a little small tucked away place where it's just quiet.
Yeah,
other than when you hear the motorcycles going up and down the street, right?
Yeah, holds the time.
Other than that,
like when you turn the lights off at night and go to sleep, it is pitch black.
Quiet.
It's so peaceful.
Yeah.
And when growing up, whenever I would go there, the one thing I always do, and I'm happy you said the thing about the motorcycles, I used to always want to get a motorcycle because of going there and seeing people ride. And
Me too. I still want one. But that was like our family, like all of them rode bikes. And it was like, well, I want to ride bikes too. Like, I want to be able to do that.
My grandma said I couldn't. Grandma Mars, she said I couldn't ride no bikes. She said it's too dangerous. Yes,
well, I don't think at this point I probably will, but I definitely, up until probably having my child, was like, I'm still get a bike. I'm still riding my cousins.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's just it's a small, close-knit family. I mean, most of everybody's family has been there for a long time, and then now have just generations of generations there. Still, my grandma's house is still there. She's next door to her, like literally lived next door to her sister-in-law, who next door to sister-in-law was her daughter. And behind there is her granddaughter. It's like all in that space, and, you know, so much land and so much rich history there. But, you know, like my favorite thing is, like you said, it's pitch black. And like just to stand outside at night and just look at the sky, it's just so quiet, and just, you know, it's just one of those, like I said, it's a small town. There's no stoplights. There's some turns.
That's it. There's just turns
to get into the town, into the area. And it's like 2-3 main turns off the highway.
And you got to know where you're going.
You got to know where you're going. And both of my side, you know, my dad and my mom's family are both there, which is why it was so cool.
That's crazy.
With both sides. And it's even cooler. It's like, so my grandmother, when she was teaching, my dad's sister, who's my aunt, obviously, and my grandmother taught in the same classroom. So like my grandmother was my assistant teacher to my dad's sister, which was crazy. So I definitely like was so connected to them and spent a lot of time with them. But it was cool. It's like I get to spend time with my grandmother and my aunt, you know, whenever I went there. But yeah, I haven't been back much, mainly because the internet is not the greatness, and I need that.
It's rural. When we say rural, it's rural.
I mean, my hotspot don't even really work. I've literally got in my car and drove to the top of the road to communicate with people and try to get a signal. So,
where you at, Starlink?
Huh?
Where you at, Starlink?
Yeah, there's no Starlink.
Y'all don't know about Starlink? That's satellite internet.
I know about Starlink. We know about that Tesla
I need
Starlink.
to check Starlink out or whatever. But whenever I mean, my family knows.
Is it active? Is it active?
It is somewhat. I know that they dropped a whole bunch into the Ukraine just recently, so that they can still
get out and get some information.
Everything that's going on. Yeah,
I need to look into that because, well, I mean, I think some people have internet. My grandmother doesn't live there full time. She's between. She actually. So my grandmother's 87. And she's pretty much, I guess she's the oldest in our family right now, the oldest living family member.
That is
so she, because all of her, she is. I think she's the oldest on that side of the family. But, you know, so she lives here and she comes to my house to vacate and have a vacation. So she'll stay with me for a week or two. But she lives with my aunt who lives maybe 30 minutes away. That's where she is full time. And she calls my house her vacation house. So she'll come over.
Sounds like you're setting yourself up as a hub.
You are the hub. I'm about to come up. I got to come to your hub.
Come visit. Y'all please come. I love people visiting. I love
you have it set up so well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. So y'all come on through. But yeah, so that's a little bit about Plantersville. Like I said, it's one of those places I looked forward to going to growing up. Like, it was like I get to go to my grandparents. And I had such an amazing relationship with my grandfather. You know, I love my grandfather. I love my grandparents in general. Like, so I never wanted to leave their house and spend so much, like, even just thinking about it, like, just like even smell, just remembering just my grandfather was an amazing cook and, you know, would cook breakfast and cook everything and fished and did all those things. So many amazing like memories that I hold on to that are just, you know, things that we just don't see now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, different way of life, man. That's why I always like telling people about it because, like, it's a place you never really hear about. And I know our family's from there. So I always try to tell people, this is a real place. This is where our folk come from. This is why we act the way we act. We've been trained and taught a certain way. And they're like, why are you like this? I'm like, this is a reason. So I always try to tell people about that place. So they have it on the podcast now. You know, got it in the cannons, recorded. It's nice. It's real nice. I guess moving on to this next question, this makes sense. And you kind of already broke this down, like your influences of, you know, how you ended up on that path of wanting to get into the realm of education. But we speak to a lot of educators on our platform. And I always tell people, you know, education is a noble profession. You talked about the compensation, the fact that, hey, for you to be able to take care of yourself and do what you need to do, you needed to be able to have a certain amount of income. And because the workload is heavy, and like you're literally you're in that field because you want to be there. It's for love of the field. Like most people don't go there because they're trying to become rich. So could you explain to that part? Could you explain to the audience why, like, so you chose that path, But what are the steps that you had to take to get there? And I know because our podcast is about millennials trying to figure out how to adult and figuring out how things work in society so that we aren't as ignorant to stuff. So could you explain that process?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think one of the things that we don't really talk about is a lot of this starts when you're like in elementary school and middle school and high school, right? Like you don't just kind of wake up, and I think it's also important, now I guess I look at it as in me raising my own child. I think that's the kind of perspective I look at it now as far as path and steps is like, we have to give kids opportunity to figure these things out and figure out what they want to be, and my parents really did give me space to like, if I, say like, I want to be this and I want to explore that, they gave me the space to explore that, right? They didn't tell me whether what I wanted to do or what they wanted me to do. They gave me opportunities to explore so many things, not just, education stuff, sports, right? I played a lot of sports. I was an athlete and that taught me a lot. So, when I look at steps of kind of how I got there, it was, thinking about things I want to do. I'd like to try this sport. Okay, well, let's do this. I want to play this instrument. Okay, well, let's try it. And trying things out and testing it out. And if you really, if you kind of look at the path I took, that's what I did. I've tested, tried things that are new, maybe look interesting, and then kind of navigate that. So, for me, it was, I want to be a teacher. Okay, well, now I need to go find the best schools for teachers close to me. Right. So I navigated that. I found a few schools that I really like. Okay, what kind of school is best for me? Smaller, I feel like I was going to thrive better in a smaller setting. So the college that I went to and ended up choosing was one of the better education schools and programs that are high rate of people that graduated and passed the teacher test, right? Teacher assessment test, and which was back then called the praxis. High rate of passing that, high rate of actually obtaining a job, after graduation. But like all of those things are things that I was thinking about in high school, like to prepare for college. And so I think the challenge now also is like, there's just so much exposure to things. Like we didn't have as many distractions. And so now there's like people on videos and people on this and this and this telling people what to do and how to navigate things. But nobody's really saying like, it's really just simple. Like figure out what you want to do and how to get there. Now, if I could apply this to weight loss, I'm gonna be on to something. But if I can figure out how to be consistent and apply that there, I'm gonna be on to something. But like that's really what I've done is, I've kind of figured out like I want to be this. I really believe in manifesting things, right? And so like just really kind of goes into, my business and the firm kid, but figuring out like, okay, this is what I want to do, kind of like write the path and make it plain, right? I mean, that's just scripture there, but
real talk.
And just kind of going with it. So I think it's, the path and what steps I took to become an educator were really as simple as me saying like, I want to be this or do this and researching what I need to do. Like I literally have an idea in my head of something else I want to do now. And so I'm going to spend tomorrow researching it and see like how viable that is. And so I think we just have to apply that to whatever it is. Like I want to, even athletes. I mean, to become a professional athlete, like you got to figure out that's what you really want to do. And you got to put some time and effort and energy in. And again, I think it goes back to like what I was saying earlier, like you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And so navigating what that anything is for you and the steps to get there, but also recognizing along the path that like, there's going to be some pivots necessary and changes necessary, and that's okay. I think so many people are like, they get stuck on a path, a very linear path, and it doesn't go their way. It sets them off so bad that they like shift off the road,
all the way.
And
you gotta surf.
Right. And just can't get back on. And it's like when people were questioning me when I left education, I was like, it does not make sense to me. Like, and it may not make sense to you, but like, I already knew at that point, like given my path and given my experience and my relationship with God, like there's something bigger on the other end of this, and I'm just gonna rock with it, right?
Yep.
And it's taken me to where I am now, right? The path did not make sense. I made a lot of different steps and mistakes and changes, but ultimately it's kind of like the culmination of where I am now. If you just kind of lay out the timeline, I'm back to all of it. I'm in tech, which I love. I'm in ed tech. Like, who does that? Like, I'm in education, technology, doing what I love, working with people, helping people, training people, and doing those things. So like, if I would have derailed and got really upset or bothered by like some shifts that happen and not just rock with it, like, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. So I think for me, it's the path and the steps is as simple as like, rock with it, right? Just make sure just go with it. As long as you know you have a plan and you're trying to get somewhere, like it'll be fine. But what you can't do is like have such a setback that you're in a corner rocking back and forth because you're so bothered by it. And I think that's the challenge, the mental challenge that a lot of people are handling right now is that we're surrounded by perfection, right? And so because you see everybody else doing these things, right? I mean, I love social media.
Fake perfection. Let's be real. Perfection. It's all fake. Yeah.
It's perfection. Like, I will tell you, I'm a hot mess. Like, let's be real. Like, I'm really a hot mess. Like, I am. I'm really a hot mess. But like, I pull it together and do what I need to do. But like, I got mess with me too. You know. And I think,
but like the ability to focus, like you said, to what's the word that you the ability to curate what people see. Is that that's a weird thing nowadays. Yeah.
And that's what I feel like is one of the concerns that I have is like, people are you're seeing everybody's highlight reel, right?
Yeah.
But you don't see, you see after the edits, right? And you see after the cleanup, but it's like nobody talks about like that night that you were crying about it. Nobody talks about like that you worked 12 hours, or nobody talked about, everybody's like, oh, you have a podcast. Nobody talked about the fact that you had to make sure that the sound was working. Nobody wants to talk about
this morning. The amount of time,
the questions and the links and the research and the time and the energy. But it's like, oh, you have a podcast and you have a great podcast. Okay. Yeah. But like there's behind the scenes to getting that done, or nobody wants to talk about the time where the sound wasn't working, right?
Right? Oh, it happened several times. We'll talk about it.
It happened several times.
We can talk about it, but nobody really wants to talk about it. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. Unless it's other nerds who's trying to figure it out too. But I think there is like a culture that like you make dinner by walking up to the stove and pressing X twice, and that's not how the world works.
Like when you figured that out, I need you to tell me first, because if I can fix X and figure that thing out and have dinner ready, I will be on it. I will pay whatever it is.
That's real manifesting there.
Yes. So let me go ahead and put that out in the spirit right now, because that would help my life a lot.
So y'all hurt me right now. Y'all hurt me.
That would be
I guess
so
you can.
great.
It's just called Uber Eats, and then
Listen, but those fees though.
And that's always the thing.
Go get it yourself.
It's always the thing. And you know how healthy it is if you do it yourself. But
right. I know. Okay. We're not going to preach today on that.
Yeah, no preaching.
Okay. I struggle in that area. That's one of my areas of like, I'm so busy that I don't do enough cooking. So
kind of the modern world. We all do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of, like you said, doing so much because, we have the time, the technology, and the capability, but knowing that you can't do everything. Like, it's hard to get that to work.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, when we talk, self-care, and I'm sure we'll get to talking about that more, but like, I've had to learn to do some delegating because I can't do it all.
Understood.
Delegate. I've had to delegate. And what I have reminded myself is that my goal is not to be a shero. Like I cannot do it all. And it took me a while to get there. But yeah, we have to delegate and be mindful of how we're managing our time better. And I'm working on that as well. It's like, does it make sense to get somebody else to do this, or does it make sense for me to do this? And I have to ask myself that about some things. And I feel better sometimes when I do delegate, because like, oh, they did it in 2 hours. It would have taken me the next week to do that. So
see, that's part of having that business mindset. And I know, segueing into the next question, like, how do you start a business during the pandemic? Could you explain this to our audience and let them know what Affirm Kids is and what it does for folks? But this is very interesting because, like you said, you had a hard pandemic anyway, and you started a business. How did you do that?
Right. So, like, I would not recommend it. I give it 0 stars. Okay, everybody, let's just be clear.
But a
I like
lot of people have
that.
started businesses during the pandemic.
I know. It's so funny because, and I'm just kidding, but honestly, it was probably one of the best things I did. But I think one of the things, so again, like 2021 was, I literally started a new job in May, right? The vision for the business came to me in March. So it's actually been a year. The vision for the business came to me in March. Thank you. So the vision came in March. I didn't start the business till about June, July, which is still a short period of time. But I know this is going to sound to some people, depending on your beliefs and religious beliefs, but I literally had a vision one day where God showed me like these cards, and I do affirmations with Emory already. So that's one of the reasons why this is really important to me. Since she was a baby, I've been doing affirmations with her. And even when she started talking, she does them. And we do them in the mirror and we do songs with them. And we start our day with it. So in the morning, she does it, and to the point where she like affirms me, which is really funny. But so we've been doing this since she was a baby. Like, I mean, every day I was telling her how beautiful she is, because one of the things I wanted to make sure is that she didn't have to worry about, like, again, I love my parents, safe space, but like, there are places and gaps in all of our lives where we were not affirmed, right? And so I wanted to make sure that I went on and kind of got ahead of that, so that when she was my age, that she wasn't wanting or needing someone to tell her that she's beautiful, that she already knows that. And so that was one of the things I didn't want her to have to worry about the world telling her what she was and she wasn't, because I was going to do that. I'm going to tell her so she already knows, and then they can reinforce it. But I want her to be able to know that and have that confidence. And so, like I said, we've been doing affirmations forever. I was trying to do something for Valentine's Day, I remember, and wanted to like put affirmations on her door, and then didn't do it, and was trying to make some flashcards. And then like really one day a vision came of like somebody had asked me about doing affirmations with Emmy and if I would write some of them down. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, maybe I'll make some flashcards of them. And then I literally got this vision of like, well, people are always asking me what I do with Emmy. So there's some background here. So because again, she's done at 1, she knew her letters, right? Like she was a baby talking and doing things that were very advanced. So she has like a little fan base that follows her and knows, and so she's just kind of always been advanced and done things. So people will reach out and say like, hey, what at this age, when did you start doing that? That's always everybody's saying. When did you start doing, like, how did you get her to do that? What age did you start? And so, probably should just write a book or something or some curriculum for people, but when do I have time to do that? And so, I always just tell them what I did, when I started, how I did it, give suggestions, here's some stuff. And then also I learned from other people. I'll ask them like, well, your child's doing this. When did they start? I mean, none of this stuff that we do is original. Somebody's else already done it. So I either find somebody who's done it, that's doing it, or figure it out myself. And so from that, like somebody had asked about maybe writing down some of the affirmations that I use. And I had a vision of like these cards, and I had a vision of what they look like, and that I was selling them, and that I was going to, distribute these cards. It made no sense when the vision came to me, but I was like, it was so clear, and I saw the like vision and path that I had to move because I couldn't shake it. So I kept having the thought like, I need to do this thing. And it's like, I don't have time. I'm trying to find a new job right now. I'm applying to jobs, which everybody knows trying to find a job is another job. And so I was like, I don't have time. But I spoke it to a friend, and he was just like, Ebony, you're on to something. And I was like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, whatever you just said to me, like that is something, like it's going to be something. And after that, I just started moving, because I think it's something about speaking things out, like taking a dream or vision and sharing it with a safe space, safe person, right? Somebody you're comfortable with.
Yep.
And sharing it, because it's like, as I spoke it to him, it like, I really saw it. And then in that, I just started literally, I started moving. Like I just started moving. I got a new laptop and started designing cards. I had no plan for what the cards are going to be, how they're going to print them, who's going to make them. But the vision of the cards came so clear that I spent like one night, 4 hours, just like making them. And next thing I know, I had designed 50 cards. I got an artist to help with some of the art. And then it was like, oh, okay, so what do I do with all this? And then I just started researching print press places, card box places. How am I going to do this? How am I going to sell them? Where are they going to be? All of that. I knew nothing like about how to set up a business, but what I knew is that I could figure it out. And I had enough friends that were business owners, not doing the same thing, but that could connect me. But I also know how God will strategically put people in your life as you need them. And that is what this story for me is about, is that I had no plan, but I literally started meeting people that were connecting to and knew these things. And even like one of the, big kind of, for me, stories was I went to this mom's event, little, like mix and mingle thing. And I had just started kind of business. And, they're like, if you have a business or starting business, I shared. The lady who owned the building heard me talking afterwards, pulled me to the side and was like, hey, I heard what you're doing. When are your cards going to be ready? I want to put them in my store. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And then she pulled me aside and was like, hey, I offer coaching to women who want to sell wholesale. I offer this. I offer these things, these services. As a new owner, as a minority owner, I'd like to just offer those to you for free.
Wow.
So I got this like full support of somebody who is literally, has access to stuff, even to the point where I was trying to get into another wholesale market. I applied myself, did not get in. I reached out to her and was like, hey, do you know anything about this space? She had just done a podcast for this company. I was like, just reapply. I was approved the next day.
Wow.
So I sell so again, it's like, I know that's all over the place, but these are just the things that happen. But right, if I didn't move this is why I tell people like move, right? Because if I didn't move in March and I went to something in May, I wouldn't have been ready. Right.
Yeah.
So if I went to something in July or August, I wouldn't have been ready for that opportunity because I didn't move when I was supposed to in March. And so again, I'm still making stuff up as I go. Don't tell anybody. Well, everybody knows now. I'm still making it up as I go. But I think the important thing for me about the Firm Kid is that I moved, right? The vision came and that I moved, because I think we get so caught up sometimes in everything having to be perfect and laid out. Because people are asking me questions along the way and they're like, well, did you figure this out and you figured that out? I was like, no, but I will. I'll figure it out at some point. It was just like, I just need to get the cards. I need to get them printed and I need to get boxes. I'll figure the rest out. Like, where are you doing this? Or how are you going to do your accounting? And how are you going to, I don't know. Next, I need to figure out a website. I found a friend, somebody to do a website. Well, how are you going to sell this? I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. Like, I just kind of was like, me figuring, everything is figure outable, right? But me sitting here and like not moving forward to drag all this out is pointless, And I have great friends who are very smart. One of my really good friends she has an amazing story of how she started her bakery, and she has the same story. It's like, I just figured it out. Like, I didn't have a business plan and laid out. Like, I don't even now I have to, because of some opportunities with investors and things that I'm gonna have to, tighten it up. But like, I didn't sit and I made a big plan, but I didn't sit and have this like 10-page business plan that people feel like you need to have to start a business. I didn't have, do you have to have a vision and a plan? Yes. Do you have to have everything figured out? No.
That's a good point. Because sometimes people won't do because they don't have it all the way figured out.
Yeah. And
that's the biggest thing. That's the one that stops everybody.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. People that did it didn't know how to do it.
Listen, I don't understand why people don't just understand that Google exists for a reason. Like,
nobody else has ever had that much information. We got more information than anybody has ever had, ever.
I tell people, Google that shit. Like, go Google it. Like, go figure that out.
That's so darn true. That is so true. At least,
but I mean, we have a resource there.
Yeah.
I mean, literally yesterday, somebody was asking me something. I'm like, and not that I get annoyed by people, but it's like, we have a whole thing called Google for that purpose. Like, why are you texting me to ask me how to do something? And my response was like, you should YouTube or Google that. And then like 2 hours later, she's like, I figured it out. And I was like, yeah. She wanted me to like come to her house and show her how to do something. And I'm like, you should YouTube or Google that. I don't mind
Yeah, we
helping
have no
people.
excuse. We have
I
no
don't mind. I don't mind helping people. Let's be clear. But it's like certain things. Honestly, like it was a device that I don't have, and it's kind of like somebody asking you to help you with something that you don't have, and it's like it's probably best to ask somebody that either has it or an expert in it. And I guess I led her down the path and helped her to get there. But
you did. You taught her how to fish.
but yeah, I mean, so again, I know I kind of got off, but the Affirm Kid came out of a vision, and it was bigger. It was about, not just having a business, but also wanting, my goal and vision was to be able to affirm every child, because what we know, but also not just every child, right? I wanted to really focus on my brown babies, right? That because there's so much going on and parents are so busy, and a lot of parents there's two parents working or just one parent working. There's, we have to make sure that we're taking time to tell them who they are so that they can be like they're going to be the next generation. Right. And so my goal in the Affirm Kid is to be able to affirm every child and to help parents do that. Because what I know is that if you're busy, you need tools, right? It's just like as a busy parent, like if you could give some child some flashcards and have them sit there and look at them, that's a resource and that's a tool to help them while they're doing something else. I do the same thing with Emmy. I'll give her some cards or some flashcards or paper or whatever to write, keep her, contained for a little bit. But a lot of people just don't know how to do it. I mean, I remember talking about affirmation. People like, I don't know how to do that. Like, what does that look like? What do I say? And, I created these in the cards. I created like a format, like template of like basically you say like, you are beautiful. And, the child can say, I am beautiful. You are smart. I am smart. You are intelligent. I'm intelligent, whatever it is. And then the biggest thing for me is that I also have, I love you cards. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's a set of the cards it's 55 cards. They say you are whatever I am. And then I have a set of I love you cards because I feel like one thing that we're lacking is telling children we love them every day. And I want to make sure that there was something in a part of this to help parents, because some people are uncomfortable for it because why? Nobody told them they would love them. Right. So if your parents didn't say I love you every day, you think that's what that looks like, right? So you think I'll just show love by what I do. I may not have to say it, but now we need to tell these kids I love you every day. Like they need that. We're in a different season. We're in a different space. We're in a different world. Like kids need to hear that. And so they hear so many other things that it's important for them to hear, that somebody loves them and remind them of who they are. So that's the big story of kind of where it came from. Also, just other little things of more of the behind the background and reasoning was just more too for me. Like, I'm a big fan of therapy and mental health and wellness. Yep. So
we are on the show. That's something we talk about regular.
Yes. So that's great. And, I had a conversation with, my therapist one time, and, we were just talking about childhood and breaking down, because sometimes a lot of the issues that we have are things that we just are uncomfortable going back and uncovering from childhood. And so we went through this, space where we were just talking about like, who did this for you? Like, who was the person who told you you were beautiful, or did somebody tell you you're beautiful, or how were you complimented? And how was this? It was such an intense activity. I was a hot mess when I finished it, but like just emotional because it was draining, because you basically are going back to your childhood and uncovering things. And that took a lot of energy to pull that back. But I looking at it now, it's like I uncovered things that I just never paid attention to. As simple as like, did anyone tell you that you were beautiful? Did anyone ever tell you that you were smart? And then you're like, did somebody? Or like, were you complimented? And it was like, I realized that I was complimented on my like intellect, like how smart I was, or comments about my physical were usually more questioning, like, gosh, you're tall, because I'm tall, I'm 5'11". So, or like, wow, you have big feet. Like, not negative, but it was like,
oh gosh, you were like La Cienega off of the Proud Family.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, or Luisa now, like in Encanto. That's my new.
Matter of fact.
But you're just, and so it wasn't like that somebody ever said like you're not pretty or you're not, but it was the people highlighted the anomalies, I guess, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so it really just uncovered a lot of that stuff, and it was like, okay, well, if parents can like combat some of this early by being able to tell kids like, you are these things that will help. Right. And so again, it's just really just wanting to affirm children, and heck, adults need to be affirmed too. Like, I mean,
Very
words
true.
of affirmation is a word of love language, right? The people strive and, want that. Like, everybody's needs are different. And there's some adults that everybody needs words of affirmation, period. Like, but some people need it more than others. And, I just know that in the world we live in, that kids needed that. And so I'm just trying to provide another way to fill a gap. And so now it's just turned into like a business, and I sold probably close to 600 sets of cards since starting in like June, July.
That's cool.
I've expanded to also doing wall art. So wall art, people can buy the downloadable like print and print it themselves, or I have in stores locally the print like canvas and framed art as well. But
wow.
So expanded really like right now. So I do all my own marketing and all my own stuff also on top of my regular job. But I just kind of I went really hot and heavy from like June or July when I started through the end of last year. And just getting ramped up in a new position at the same time, I just realized that I needed a little bit of some self-care and balance back in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I recognized that, and I slowed down on my marketing because, but the goal of marketing is to push sales and get out there. So I slowed down my marketing, which is funny because people have still been buying, but I slowed down my marketing. I really just stopped marketing it, focused on wholesale because I got into a wholesale market. And so that helps a lot because in that space, people will order 6 or 8 or 5 or 10, and they put them in their stores. So right now, like if somebody looks like I'm not really marketing, my website's up, people buy. I literally had somebody yesterday, I discovered my website was down because somebody was trying to buy, and they reach out, I'm like, hey, your website's down. I'm like, I fixed it. I'm big on customer service. Like to me, like for that, it was like, hey, here's a code, take, some money off. And the other girl that, sent you that way, send me her email, let me send her something because they didn't have to do that.
Good customer service.
But yeah, so that's kind of where, it is now. We've just been busy and like had really cool opportunities to meet people, talk to people, share. Actually, I can't share exactly what the school is, but I just had a school order 150 cards, one for each family that I'm providing to them next month. So
excellent.
Working on that and excited again that a principal, recognizes the importance of this and wants to do that for her students and provide that to the families. So again, really, it's funny because I tell people like I'm laying low because I'm kind of not trying to do much with it because I am so busy. But even in that, I've had 2 or 3 people reach out in the last, I was highlighted for Black History Month for some things, and people reached out and have somebody that, may be a potential investor and another partnership to work with somebody that does clothing and to maybe do some of the, affirmations on kids' clothing, even talking to somebody about being in some wider spaces. I had somebody who used to sell greeting cards reach out to connect to work in some of those spaces and selling in larger quantities in department stores and things like that. So it's one of those things where I'm realizing that, like I said, back to the vision, like when God gave it to me, he was going to make sure that it did what it needed to do. Right. And I'm just doing, right. I'm not even working hard at it. The things are coming and the things are happening, and it's because it was meant to be. And so I just kind of lean on that and try to balance the rest of it.
Well, shoot, man. I think you're doing a good job at it. You seem like you're about that life, and you don't, like I said, it's something that you love, and you're putting it together with your other work. And that brings us, I mean, you've been talking about it the whole time. And I think this is one of the things that's hardest for us, our millennial group, and for us to understand as we've been adulting and learning how to be grown-ups, as I always like to tease. But work-life balance, man. Like, how do you keep yourself geared up, recharged, refueled to be able to go out and be effective, especially as a single mother, without, when I'm saying everybody's going to experience it, but like while trying to avoid burnout? Like, what are some steps or some tips you could give to our audience about that?
So I'm gonna start this with, again, reminding everybody that I'm really a hot mess. So, but, you know, I think the balance is a word I've been using a lot because a lot of it is, it's not even just work life. It's just balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do struggle with balance. You know, my friends will tell me you need to sit down sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But what I've tried to do is, you know, make sure one of the things is like just figuring out what things you really enjoy doing. Like people are like, oh, I love this, I love that. But it's like, what do you really enjoy? Like, do you really enjoy just being home? I am not a homebody. Like, I like to be out in these streets. So let me just be real. I mean, I like to be out.
Streets.
And so, you know, I enjoy like going to dinner and going to the bar and doing those things. I love people. Like, I'm a true social butterfly extrovert. Like, my friends get annoyed because they were like, you know that person? I'm like, no, we just start talking and we're going to go out next week. You know, like, what? I don't even understand how you got there. It's like, oh, it's just whatever. But it's just my personality. But I think with that is finding those things that I really do enjoy. And so like hanging out with friends and traveling are some of those things that I lost over a period of time because I got so busy in trying to do the like stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like the career path and being on boards and doing all that I lost myself. Like I lost myself in my, you know, previous relationship or marriage. Like I like lost myself in my career a little bit. And so, you know, again, with that, just restoring myself and getting back to life is short. Like people are going away from here. And so I have to figure out like, how can I still maximize my time, get things accomplished? You know, I choose often sleep over cleaning, you know, like little things like that. Like I have clothes that need to be washed, but I would prefer this morning to sleep in until I need to get up to do this. And I made that choice.
Yeah. Take care of yourself.
And so I think it's just making choices. You know, one thing that I do find that I'm working on like rebuilding back into, you know, my schedule is just like working out, walking. Like I don't do well in the winter. I learned recently, it's just winter cold. I just don't like cold. And so I'm like, when there's I do better just being active in the spring and being outside and walking or running or doing those things. But, you know, one thing is just being active, but also just like spending time with yourself. And I've been trying to be really intentional about that because a lot of this is really just discipline, motivation, focus, balance, intentional, and accountable. Like all of those things are words that all of that touches, right? Because it's accountable to who you're accountable to, right? Yourself and whoever else you got to be accountable to for whatever. But I'm really bad about accountability sometimes to myself. It's like, I said I'm gonna do it, I got to do the thing. Or, you know, making sure I'm committing to doing those things. So again, I know it sounds all over the place, but these are current challenges that I'm having, but I am committed to navigating it. You know, I built a gym in my house so that like I don't have the excuse that I have to go to the gym because I can't get up early enough to go. But then I actually got to use the gym that I have in the house too. So, you know what I mean? It's like you still have to do the thing. And so I think the biggest thing for me is making sure that I create space to check out like on Sundays. So I call Sundays self-care Sundays because my daughter is with her dad on Sunday, every Sunday. And so I will brunch my life away on a Sunday. Right. And so like, that is kind of like the funny thing where it was like, oh, it's self-care Sunday. So on Sundays, like people know I'm free. Like if you want to go to brunch, let me know. Like I'll meet you there. If not, I'm going to be there myself. But like, I try to create that day to kind of go to church, I'm sorry, I'm leaving church and going to brunch, but whatever. You know, well, not just brunch to eat though, friends. So let's be clear. But so I leave church and go to brunch and then, you know, just try to make sure I kind of get myself together for the day or head in a space for the day. And I have one of my friends lately where, you know, if I don't have my daughter on a Friday or on a Sunday, like we've just made it a thing where we do go. And sometimes it's just us two, or sometimes there's other people, but we've created that space that we know we need that. She's also a business owner. We need that to like pull back from everything, you know, and just recharge. So I think it's, again, time management. I'm finding I have to get up a lot earlier than I would like to get up to get everything accomplished in the day. I'm finding I have to go to bed earlier than I usually do to be able to have the energy to get up the next day. So again, that's time management, right? Managing my day, my time. I'm much better about like trying to keep lists and keep up with stuff because there's just so much that needs to be done, and prioritizing my list of like what has to be done this weekend. Like I have a list of things that I really got to get accomplished this weekend, and making sure that I block time out to do them. The next couple of months are like super busy. So like just sitting down and saying like, what are the things that I have to get done? You know, making sure I use my calendar. Like if it's not on my calendar, it probably won't happen. Like my brain is just not able to, like some people can keep stuff in their head. I've learned that I cannot. So that has been
different stuff in your head.
Yeah. Cause yeah, right. I can't
Don't
keep
be hard on yourself. There's other things going on.
Right. But times and events far out, I can't keep in my head. Like I'll know that I have something, but like if I didn't put it on my calendar, it's like, wait, I know there's a thing on this date because I have this date in my head, but I can't remember what it is. So yeah, I mean, I guess all of that goes along with just, you know, keeping up with Emmy's schedule, keeping her together, you know, just knowing what I need to do and accomplish. And sometimes just saying like, I need to sit down. Like right now, I just got back off. I went to Bahamas last weekend. Like coming back from a trip is always another kind of exhausting thing. And like, right. It's like, I should have, like, why don't we just have like a vacation from the vacation? I feel like that should be a part of the package when you take off for work. It's like, you are guaranteed 2 extra days to just recover. Yeah. And so, you know, I think, like I said, all of that is, I think for parents, you know, especially, it's really like doing the best that you can. And like, that's literally what I try to tell myself every day. I'm going to do the best I can today. And then I'm going to try again tomorrow because it is so easy. And I do it to myself. I can be really hard on myself. Mm-hmm. And I've had to like try to remove that because again, I've accomplished a lot, but there's still more to do. But if I get caught up in like all the things I didn't do today or didn't do right, or that needs to be done, it can be draining. Right. And so I try to just give myself my word of the year, like even with people, not my literal word, but I've been telling people, just give yourself some grace. Like we all need some grace in this season because we're dealing with stuff that we've never dealt with. And not that we've never dealt with, no one's dealt with. Nobody knows what it's like in our current world to be living in a pandemic. So we have expectations of how people are supposed to respond and act and do and live in a space that nobody has navigated. And that's not fair. Mm-mm. So, you know, that's why I tell people, give yourself some grace because we all figuring this thing out together. Like we're 2 years in and nobody seems to got any different answers.
Isn't that the truth? You ain't lying. You ain't lying.
So, you know, but I think that's the biggest thing for me, like with parents, is like, give yourself some grace. Being a single parent is hard. Like when people ask me literally every day, all the time, if I want another kid, and I just say blank, no. And they look at me, no. Yeah. And they're like, and I usually say, hell no, but I'm gonna say no today. And they just look at me and they're like, I can't believe you don't want any kids, more kids. You love kids. I absolutely love children and I love my own child, but do I want another child? You're asking me a question. I don't. Yeah. And because it is, being a parent is a lot. It's hard work. And I feel like, you know, doing it by yourself is a double work. And obviously, like if I had another child, would probably be in a relationship. But, you know, if you don't have the right partner to do some of these things with, I don't want to do it. And so I think that's one of the things where I'm much more confident in just saying no to certain things. I'm getting better about it. But, you know, one of my favorite authors, she says, like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And that's something I've been trying to really work on in general. It's like, even as a parent, like if doing something extra, if somebody asks you to do something, I think that's a part of balancing it all, is that you got to say no sometimes. And it's
one of the hardest things to do. Yeah. Very hard.
It's so hard.
Very hard. Especially if you're skilled at something or you have talent.
Yeah. And it's funny. A few weeks ago, I went to like this self-care thing and the lady was saying, you know, sometimes it's okay to say yes to certain things and we want to say yes. And it's okay, especially if it's in your wheelhouse. And I was like, that's, I think the thing is like some stuff we're okay saying yes to because we know that's easy, right? Like if somebody asks you guys to do something related to a podcast, that's easy, right? Yeah. Because that's your wheelhouse. Like that's where you're comfortable. That's your space. But if somebody asks you to do something else that you really didn't want to, that doesn't that might be an easier no because it's not your thing. You know what I mean? So I think that's something I'm learning too, is like some things are easy, yes. And I know I can do it quickly, but some stuff's a no because it's just not something I want to do.
That is a good rule of thumb to have, especially gotta be able to turn it off. But I know we're about to get ready to wrap up.
Yeah.
And before we do so, I do want you to tell our audience any projects, like current projects that you're working on that they might be interested in, and where they can find you online and on social media.
Yeah. So projects, I think the project I'm working on is just getting myself back to me. Right. And that's really right now. So I have some kind of things or goals, even especially more like, which I haven't really spoke out loud about, it related to like our local government, some things I want to do or participate in. And so, but I have committed to personally getting my life in a very balanced place and getting a hold of, because quickly, what I do sometimes is instead of like fixing some of the things I need to, I'll add something else. Right. And so my current project is that I need to like accomplish some of the little goals that are the harder ones that I need to do before starting another project. So that's one of my things is right now is that the project of focusing on my health and wellness right now is my project. And then I have a goal. And when I get to that goal, then I said I will open up the can of worms to go down a different path of some things in local government I'm interested in. So that's kind of where my head is right now. Really just focusing on the business, figuring out how I can expand, make connections with people, and just working on the Affirmed Kid and being a mom and also just working on myself as far as a, executive in a tech company, which is also not easy. And so to find me though, my website for the Affirmed Kid is just theaffirmedkid.com. There's no www. So it's just the http, / The Affirmed Kid, or you could just Google The Affirmed Kid. It'll pop up. On Instagram, The Affirmed Kid. Also, if you want to find me personally on Instagram, I'm an open book. It's my handle on Instagram is HeyEbbyHay, which is Hey Ebby Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, I know. And so that's Instagram. Honestly, even on Facebook, just find Ebony Haywood. Again, basically what's on Instagram is on Facebook. I'm an open book. Most stuff is public. It's really just pictures of Emmy at this point in life. Pictures of Emmy videos of her right now.
As it should be.
Anyway, so, you can find me there or on LinkedIn. I'm under Ebony Haywood. You can connect there. So multiple ways to connect or reach out if you want to inbox me, have questions or anything. Would love to connect with people, talk, share. Hey, I need an accountability partner. Would love one of those too. That's so where I need to go. But I love talking to people and hearing what people are dealing with and experiences. And that's kind of how I built my village and circle. So.
Well, man, it was an excellent conversation today. It was a good way to start the morning. I know I'm going to let Tamaya close us out, but I want to thank you, cousin, for joining us today on our podcast. Man.
Honor. It's an honor.
Yeah.
I'm excited about what you guys are doing. I love it. It's a blessing to be asked to do this, but I'm just thankful that people are giving other people spaces to talk that, we're not on the Oprah show and all these big time things that will have a safe space. I'm going to be on there one day though, yeah. But that people have an open space to just share, right? Like there's so many different lifestyles and stories. And I just feel like it's, podcasts are amazing. I love podcasts because they give people opportunity to speak in a platform that may be unheard or they, would not be heard. So thank you guys for what you're doing.
Yeah, this was awesome. You did a great job. So we want to say thank you to everyone for listening to us today, and make sure you to subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. We're also on Instagram and Facebook at the Hilltop Club. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other platforms. Also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Hilltop Glove.